A smart home isn't complete without automating your curtains and blinds. In my case, I've automated most of the blinds already, but I haven't automated the curtains yet. And that's why today we're going to be looking at the brand new SwitchBot Curtain Rod 3. As you can tell from the name, it's the successor to the Curtain Rod 2. There's also 3 different versions. So there's the Rod, there's the I-Rail and the U-Rail. So it should fit most of your different installations. So let's take a closer look. The way they work is that they simply clamp onto your existing curtain rod, so there shouldn't be any need for any drastic alterations, and that's what we'll find out in this video, how easy it is to install. It's also got the usual integrations, so it's got the Google Home, it's got the Amazon integration, it's got Siri, and it's also got SmartThings and IFTTT. The SwitchBot uses Bluetooth for communication, it uses Bluetooth 5, which means that it isn't Matter compatible by default. However, their Hub 2 is Matter compatible, so they've cleverly got around this and made all their products compatible with Matter by doing this. SwitchBot did send me this curtain rod to review, and they also sent me the Hub 2, which is great because at the moment I've got the Hub Mini, which means I can't use Matter, whereas with this I can integrate it with Matter and therefore with Apple HomeKit as well. And also I can try it with Home Assistant. Right, so let's go over some more of the details, starting with the price. So the list price for this is $90, €90 or £90 depending where you are, and that's fairly comparable to the previous generation. You need 2 of them if you've got 2 curtains. If you've got 1 big curtain then you'll only need 1, so just bear that in mind. I've put a link in the description to the product that gets you a discount and also gives me a small commission, which would be very much appreciated because at the moment, being a small channel, I don't get anything for doing this. Hopefully with your help I will do soon. So onto the specs, it's got an estimated battery life of up to 8 months, which I think is pretty decent. There's also a separate solar panel you can buy, which means in theory it could last forever. It's got Bluetooth 5, which means there's a range of up to 80 meters for this, which I think should be plenty for most people, and also means that you can put your hub anywhere in your house, hopefully. The noise level is advertised at 44 decibels from 1 meter away, which is fairly in line with what I tested. So I used my phone, and from 1.5 meters away, it was around about 40 decibels. And right up close to the device it was about 55 decibels on average. And it's also got a drift mode, quiet drift they call it, which means that it goes down to 25 decibels. That's basically ambient room noise. The estimated life of the product is 10 years, which I think is pretty impressive for a bot with moving parts. However, they've only given you 1 year warranty, which I think is a little bit short given the 10-year estimate. This bot can pull an impressive 15 or 16 kilograms depending on the version, and this is more than double of the previous version, but more on this later. So onto the installation. So I've got the Rod version as I mentioned earlier, but there's the U and the I-Rail as well. But even with the Rod version, you can have different types of curtains. In my instance, I've got grommet, but there's a few others as well. So I'm going to show you the installation using grommet curtains. So firstly, you want to ensure that your curtains are fully closed, and then you want to place the bot arms onto the rail, and then attach one bot to one of the arms. And to do this, you need to pull on the arm and extend it so that it can fit around the rod. You have to pull quite firmly because the arms are quite stiff to extend. This is to ensure that there's enough friction against the pole so the bot can move along without slipping. You then need to also attach a magnetic strip to the underside of your pole so that the bot knows where to stop in the fully closed position. And then finally, if you've got grommet curtains like me, you need to add the beady things as well, so that you've got even pleats along the curtain. This makes it look neater, but it also allows the curtains to move more smoothly so that the bot doesn't get stuck and have to pull too hard. Once you've done that, you then want to head into the app, and the app nicely guides you through the setup process. It shows you how to calibrate the open and close positions, and a few other bits of information as well, like installing the magnet. Now let's talk about some installation challenges that I had. The claim is that they can be installed in a matter of minutes, and I genuinely think this is the case for most people. But let's talk about the issues that I had, which means that it wasn't quite as straightforward as that for me. I have our curtain pole installed as close to the ceiling as possible so that it looks nice, neat and tidy, which means there's not a gap at the top really between the top of the curtain and the ceiling. This made it a bit harder to get leverage to pull the arms out of the bot, but no big deal really. The second issue was a bit more problematic though, and that was with the pleat guides. Because again, my curtains are so close to the top of the ceiling, it meant that it was hard to install the pleat guides, and then when I did, they actually scrape along the ceiling when I'm opening and closing the curtains. It still works, but it's not ideal. If the curtains were installed just 1 centimetre lower, then neither of these issues would have been a problem, so there might be non-issues for you. We usually leave our curtains open all the time, and we don't close them at night, so the width of our curtains when we bought them wasn't really much of a consideration. However, if you do fully close them, then the pleats are really far apart and you can't really see the pleats at all. The problem with this is that this causes a lot more friction, and when you're trying to close them even by hand, it's quite hard to pull them for the final bit. So I can understand why the bot does have a problem with this. We've got a metal pole and metal grommets, and on top of this we've also got curtains that drag along the floor. So I think for most people these won't be a problem either, but it's worth bearing in mind that if you've got heavy curtains that have been installed very close to the ceiling, dragging on the floor, and your curtains aren't wide enough, then you might have some problems. But otherwise I do think you'll be okay. I certainly can see though why they increased the pulling power of this one from the previous generation. The app has the usual functionality that you'd expect, so you can set schedules to open and close the curtains at certain times of the day, or you can do it based on sunrise or sunset, or if you've got the additional solar panel that you buy separately, then you can also do it based on light sensitivity. So it's got a light sensor on the back of the solar panel. When setting the schedules, you can choose how much you want the curtains to be open or closed, so they don't have to be fully open or fully closed. And also this is where you can choose quiet drift mode, which means that it does it quieter, but also very slowly, only 5 millimeters per second. Everything we've done so far has not involved using a hub, it's just been the phone app and the bot itself. So next we're going to look at some of the integrations you can do, but before we do that, let's have a look at them in action.
Hi Google.
Open the curtains.
Hi Google.
Close the curtains. I think they open and close quite quickly, and they could probably consider introducing a mode in between quiet drift mode and the normal mode. But now onto the integrations. So I'm not really into the Amazon or the Apple ecosystems, but I can show you the Google one. To link your curtains to Google, you will need to have one of the SwitchBot hubs, either the SwitchBot Mini Hub or the Hub 2. If you have the SwitchBot Hub Mini, then you have to go into the Google app, press Add and select the Works with Google option, which is the original integration method. Then search for the SwitchBot Smart integration, and then you'll be asked to log into your SwitchBot account. You can log in with your username and password if that's how you created your SwitchBot account. Otherwise, you might need to log in with Apple, Amazon or Google if you created your SwitchBot account like that. If you have the Hub 2, then you've got the additional option of adding it via Matter instead. Matter is its own video really, but we'll quickly go through the Google setup process. In the SwitchBot app, click on your hub and go to the settings cog in the top right and select Matter Configuration Beta. Ensure you've got a compatible Google device and then click Next. I'm not sure which devices aren't compatible with Matter to be honest, because I haven't got any new Google devices and it seems to work fine. Matter Thread would be a different Matter, but this is just Matter over Wi-Fi. You now need to put your hub into Matter pairing mode. Note that you will lose some of the basic settings when doing this, but you won't lose most of them. So to do this, you need to hold the two buttons on the front for 15 seconds as the instructions suggest, and then press Next. It then shows you the Matter pairing code and you'll need that in a minute. Now go to the Google app, add a new device and this time select the new device option. It should discover your device and then you need to press Setup without a QR code and then enter the pairing code that you got a minute ago. The final step is to go back to the Matter settings in the SwitchBot app, press secondary devices and then add your curtains, and then they should show up in the Google app after a few minutes. If you use Home Assistant and Bluetooth proxies, then you may know that there's a SwitchBot integration. Bluetooth proxies communicate directly with devices and therefore you don't need a SwitchBot hub for this approach. However, at time recording on version 2023.8.1, I couldn't get this to work. For some reason, the devices were showing up as contact sensors instead of curtains, so I'm sure this will get fixed soon though. The best option to connect it to Home Assistant is using the Matter integration. For me, I've got Home Assistant on a different VLAN to my IoT devices, so unfortunately I can't do this at the moment. But assuming they are on the same network, then you should be able to do this. In summary, you need to set up the Matter server add-on. the Matter integration, and then you need to go to the Home Assistant phone app and you need to add an integration called New Matter Device, and then go through the setup process. You'll need to go through the SwitchBot setup process that we mentioned earlier, like pairing the hub. If you want to set it up with Google and Home Assistant, then set up the Google one first. Now, a few extra bits to mention. So the magnet that you have, it needs to attach to the pole with some adhesive. So if you're planning on changing your curtain, then you might only be able to do this a couple of times before the adhesive wears off. So just bear that in mind. When it comes to closing the curtains, as well as using the SwitchBot app or your favourite voice assistant, then there's a few different ways you can do it. So there's a mode called Touch and Go, which is really neat, where you can start pulling on the curtain and then the bot will spring into action. You can also configure the two buttons on the hub to activate a scene and open or close the curtains, and on top of that you can buy a separate remote. So my closing thoughts are that it's a good incremental improvement on the previous version, which was already a decent product, and the additional pulling power will be a welcome addition for most, I think, and it should keep them at least in line or ahead of the competition. For a retrofit solution, I think you'd struggle to do any better. Well, that's it for today, so please consider subscribing and liking the video if you haven't already, and comment down below with your thoughts. So thanks, until next time.